when I was in the curriculum committee, I started falling asleep. I was in the bathroom. I thought, man, if I start feeling worse, I'm gonna have to ask Reverend Bohan to take me home.
Thank you for joining us on your school channel, Cable 2.
Winston-Salem, Forsyth County Board of Education. I am Deanna Kaplan, Board Chair, and I appreciate your attendance, and I say good evening to our viewers on Cable 2. Please rise as we start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing as you are able for the invocation given by Board Member Susan Miller. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So last night at Mount Tabor High School, I had the honor and pleasure of attending Mo Green's listening session. He is our new State Superintendent of Public Instruction. And I would like to reiterate his quote, which is from Frederick Douglass. "It is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men." May we have a moment of silence. Thank you.
Thank you. Our first order of business is the agenda review. Do I have a motion to amend the agenda to return to close after our Board of Education meeting to discuss a personnel matter?
So moved.
So I have a motion by Vice Chair Bohannon, a second by Board Member Brown Gaither. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Thank you. Thank you. That motion passes. Next, our student performance. We are excited to welcome the North Forsyth High School Brass Quintet.
This evening's performance is by the North Forsyth High School Brass Quintet under the direction of Mr. Christian Orr. When I asked Mr. Orr to tell me about his students, he said they really are a hardworking group. These students are in multiple ensembles such as the jazz band, the symphonic band, and the marching band, yet they still love performing as a small chamber ensemble, as you will hear tonight. The Brass Quintet will perform 3 brief selections for you: Ode to Joy, Amazing Grace, and St. Anthony. Please welcome the North Forsyth High School Brass Quintet.
Oh, yes. We have an overflow room for those individuals who cannot find a seat. So if you would like in 219. So if you all can move to that, that would be very helpful. Oh, yes, and the special recognitions can stay for sure. Thank you. That was wonderful. First, under special recognitions, our Command Master Sergeant Doug McIntyre will recognize the Reagan JROTC Rifle Team State Champions.
Helmet, halt, left face, parade rest.
Good evening, school board and distinguished guest. I'm Major Mark Venyo, the Senior Air Force Junior ROTC instructor for Reagan High School. I'm excited to be here tonight to recognize the Reagan Air Force JROTC rifle team. In January 2016 from across the state competed at West Forsyth High School for the Civilian Marksmanship Program North Carolina Championship. The battle for the state crown was very close. Reagan was able to take first by 16 points. And this is the first time Reagan has won the state championship. Cadet, there you go, baby. Okay. Cadet Anna Edwards was third place in the state, and Cadet Carly Edwards was fourth place in the state individually. And you'll notice that they are already wearing their state medals. Now, if we could have Ms. Tricia McManus please join us on the stage, we would love to have her present the national level medals for us. So each year, schools from all over the country shoot in a qualifying round at their home locations to vie to compete against the top teams in the national championship. So after shooting this first round, the top 26 teams qualified to compete in this championship. Reagan competed on 14 and 15 February in Anniston, Alabama. Day one of the competition, Reagan was in third place by a mere 2 points. However, day two of the competition, Reagan then set a school record in the standing position and pulled away from all the teams but one. The team also set their, go ahead. The team also set their 3x20 record with 2,104 points and their 6x20 record with 4,172 points. This team has practiced since August, totaling more than 700 hours as a team. And this culminated with the team taking second place at the Air Force National Championship. We have Cadet Anna Edwards, who finished fourth place as the individual shooter in the entire Air Force. The other team members included the team captain, Brantley Hester, Cadet Carly Edwards, and Cadet Jared Cifuentes. And while they didn't qualify as individuals, they did all three indeed shoot their personal best in this match. So we just want to say congratulations to the Reagan Rifle Team, Chief McIntyre, and Coach Rich Weiser on an amazing year.
I'd also like to say any family or friends or supporters, if you all are in the audience, please stand. Next, Pamela Henderson, the Director of Magnet Schools, will recognize the Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools Magnet Schools of America Award winners.
Good evening, Board Chair Kaplan, members of the board, Superintendent McManus, distinguished guests, and community members. I'm really excited to see so many people here to celebrate the honors that our magnet coordinators are receiving. My name is Pamela Henderson. I am the Director of Magnet Schools for Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools after serving as a magnet director in one of our over 20 magnet schools. So a little bit about what we do. This time last year, these particular magnet coordinators and their incredibly supportive administrative staff began to reflect on the ways in which the integration of magnet themes in STEM or STEAM or the visual and performing arts could be used by students as literacies toward their growth and their presence. They studied quantitative data and qualitative data. They planned cross-curricular integrated units and lessons that used the magnet theme. They worked alongside community members and each other, and finally submitted a 15 to 20 page, at the very least, portrait of their school and their work and what that looks like on a daily basis within the magnet schools. I am pleased to say that these three schools received a Magnet Schools of America National Award of Distinction for their work with kids on a daily basis and will be recognized in April in Nashville at the National Conference of Magnet Schools of America. Additionally, they will be presenting their work and workshopping with teachers and administrators from around the country in how to use that magnet theme in instruction in ways that benefit students. I'm also going to add just a really, really personal thank you before I read their names. I want to personally thank you for always showing up in all of the years that we have worked together. For me, for our students, our kids, our schools, and you are the foundation of the greatest team that I could ever ask for. So please join me in recognizing my magnet coordinators first. From Atkins High School, we have Monte Irvin, retired principal, Dr. Nichols, Dr. Gabriel. Haynes Magnet Schools, Stephanie Anderson, and Principal David Friedman. And from Diggs Latham, we have Amanda Gordon and Principal Dobson. Please give them a round of applause around the work that they do with kids every day. Thank you so much.
Next, Dr. Chris Weichert, our Chief HR Officer, and Andrew Kraft, Director of Employee Relations and Performance, will lead us in the recognitions for the state bonuses for grades 4 and 5 for the top 25% in reading.
Good evening, Chair Kaplan, Vice Chair Bohannon, Superintendent, members of the board. We're excited today. We get to celebrate up to 69 teachers who finished in the top 25% as for state bonuses as measured by EVOS. So our 4th and 5th grade teachers, when they do the data after 2024, their scores were in the top 25% of the state. Just a little fun note, they also do top 25% of the county. We actually have more people qualifying for the state than the county, which means we actually beat the rest of the state. Not that we're competitive, but that's just to be said. We have 34 of our 42 schools were representative. So it's exciting to honor these teachers who have received bonuses paid by state funds as administered by the state General Assembly, but just for their great work last school year. Andrew, would you please introduce the staff?
Certainly will. Thank you, Dr. Weichert. We have 29 amazing educators with us this evening, and if you don't mind, it's exciting, but if you don't mind holding your applause until the end, I will give you that opportunity. Starting off, we have Jenilyn Abad, Forest Park Elementary, if you'll come on down right here in front. And following Jenilyn, we have Dion Adams, Griffith Elementary, followed by Julie Airy from Moore Magnet Elementary. Following Julie is Beverly Brown from Griffith Elementary. And then following Beverly, we have Miss Tiffany Cash from Diggs Latham Elementary. And then right behind Tiffany is Alexis Krotz from Hall Woodward Elementary. And then we have Shauna DeShazo from Kimmel Farm Elementary, followed by Ashley Doss from Old Richmond Elementary. Then we have Carla Drezen from Whitaker Elementary, followed by Ryan Flowers from Sedge Garden Elementary. Then we have Christy Franklin from Ward Elementary. And following Christy is Mariah Fulton from Mineral Springs Elementary. Following Mariah, we have Dr. Carmichael Henry from Kimmel Farm Elementary. And following Dr. Henry is Rizwana Khan from Diggs Latham Elementary. Then we have Leanne Lundquist from Whitaker Elementary. And following Ms. Lundquist is Margie Season from Hall Woodward Elementary. But we're not done yet, and hopefully we still have enough room. We might have to improvise, y'all. Aaron Rains from Brunson Elementary. Then we have Janice Roswith Chambers from Conoke Elementary. Then we have Giovanni Rowson from Kimmel Farm Elementary. How we doing over there? We doing all right? We got enough space? We're making it happen. All right. Then we have Lisa Scott from the Virtual Academy. Following Lisa is Linda Seymour from Diggs Latham Elementary. Then we have Anthony Spallino from Moore Magnet Elementary. Following Anthony is Jamila Spence from Griffith Elementary. And right behind Jamila is Jasmine Stamps from Smith Farm Elementary. Come on down. If we need to make a second row, we'll make it happen. We got you. We did not practice, by the way, if you can't tell. All right, let's see, we have Jasmine Stamps, and then Jasmine Stamps from Smith Farm Elementary. I want to make sure I pick up where I left off. Then we have Nissa Vogel from Whitaker Elementary. And then we have Jeanette Williams from Kimmel Farm Elementary, followed by Tara Wolf from Rural Hall Elementary. All right, Kimberly Woody from Brunson Elementary. And last but not least, we have LaToya Wright from Petrie Elementary. Let's give them a huge round of applause. Thank you so much. And quickly, y'all can have a seat. Any family or supporters, are you here with us? We want to keep you standing. Thank you so much.
Congratulations. Thank you. Congratulations. That's awesome.
Ms. Vogel from Whitaker was my grandson's teacher last year, and she nominated him this year for Thursday night. So he's
Thomas Krantz, our Chief Financial Officer, will now recognize the Sustained Professional Purchasing Award.
Good evening. So purchasing is a department that's a necessary evil, has lots of rules and regulations, and so it's perceived many times when it's trying to comply with those rules and regulations to be an obstructionist in the movement of things. I've got to say, during my 3 years, John has done an excellent job in the purchasing department. And recently at their national convention here in North Carolina, the purchasing department was recognized for excellence, and I'm going to let John say a few words about the award.
Good evening. The criteria for the award include the use of technology, procurement policy and procedures manual, minority outreach, staff certification, internal customer training, vendor training, and the use of recycled products. This is the first time that this district has ever won this award, and we are very excited, and we're very passionate about purchasing, as you can tell with Tommy. We appreciate everything that not only the superintendent, but also our Chief Financial Officer, Tommy Krantz, has done in helping us support and obtain this award. And again, we want to say thank you for the recognition for our purchasing department. Okay.
Shake his hand. Thank you so much.
Lastly, please enjoy the board spotlight video.
Incredible athletes. It is just an exciting moment in your lives and in ours. You know, at the game.
So today what we are having is our Special Olympics Spring Games. For the course of 3 days, anywhere from preschool students, because they can be involved with our young athletes, all the way to our 12th graders get to participate. This event shows them that they are capable of participating and competing against other kids their age. We're showing them that they can be a competitive person, but they can also be a good teammate. They can be excited for themselves to be a part of something and to get to do something that they might not normally get to do.
Oh my gosh, so proud of him. I'm super proud. Oh yeah. It makes me so happy seeing him so excited and just enjoying it so much and just having so much fun and making new friends and just being a whole part of it. It's beautiful.
The experience of Special Olympics is running, throwing a ball, have fun. And then also, if you want to try that too, go try it. It's so fun and it's so awesome. The awesome thing is the world is you can throw a ball, you can run. If you do a workout, you can do it. It feels great. It says first place. I threw the ball so high, like boom! If your arms are long, you can just go boom!
The one thing I really love is it shows them how wonderful and how special they are. I've heard so many times with these kids, and I've heard people say, no, you can't do that. No, they won't be able to do that. And what I love is seeing these children say, oh, no, I can do that, and I can do so much better. And they don't give up, and but when they do it with such a pure heart and just such integrity. They are so amazing.
If you get confidence, you get really good at it, and then try to do your best every time. And it's okay if you get first, second, or third place. Just try your best, and then have fun.
Oh, self-confidence is truly important for them to be advocates for themselves and for them to feel like they can accomplish what they want to accomplish.
And I've already seen the difference, and it's wonderful. It's so impactful, but in such a positive way. I feel so honored to even be able to be around it. And I feel so honored to be able to say my son is one of them, because I mean, it's just such a light, and it's so, I don't know, it really is. And if you're around them, you just feel so much love, and it's so perfect.
Makes me super happy. It is super fun, awesome, and it's great for you. Try your best, and then you get it. Thank you so much for having me in here. Thank you.
All of them are just such incredible champions. We are now moving on to our public comment section on agenda items only. We expect civility. Please be kind, considerate, respectful. Direct your comments only to me as board chair and not to anyone in the audience. And know that we cannot talk about sensitive and private student or personal information in this public setting. Please know that each public comment is heard and there's a follow-up process to address your questions or concerns. And you have 3 minutes to speak. If you have more to share, always know you can email us directly. Our first speaker is Rhonda Mays.
Good evening, Chairwoman Kaplan, the board, and Superintendent McManus. I am standing before you this evening to ask you to approve the contract for the School Health Alliance. I had the personal experience of being involved with School Health Alliance during my time here in the district as a school social worker. This partnership is great for our students and their families. First and foremost, it helps our students on so many levels: academics, health, mental health, and attendance. Because we all are aware that often when students have appointments, they will either not come to school on the day of their appointment, or when they go to their appointment, they're not going to return to school. So having the services there at the school of professionals who can work with our students is great. There's no reason not to continue that program. Please make certain that this partnership stays intact, and I'm glad to see how it is expanding to more of the schools throughout the district. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Jennifer Lee.
It's Leahy.
Leahy, thank you.
It's pronounced Layhe.
Okay.
You know, English is a funny thing.
It is a funny thing.
That's why I teach math. Good evening. I still believe the children are our future, that we need to teach them well and let them lead the way. WSFCS is an example to other districts. As such, please show your continuing support of public education by not cutting the budget, by demanding the funding our students and educators deserve, and by standing up for our federal programming. Please don't cut the budget, expand it. Show our children that we want to invest in their future. Fund our students, make sure we have the resources necessary to follow IEPs, ML plans, support Title I schools, feed the children, protect our MCV students. Fund our students and educators by making sure CTE teachers and programs are maintained. For anyone who needs to know what those acronyms mean, IEPs are individualized education plans. They are for our exceptional students to level the playing field. CTE is career technical education. Those teachers are possibly going to lose their positions because federal funding may not exist if the Department of Education is dismantled. MCV is the McKinney-Vento Act. Those are homeless students who, God bless them, hopefully can make it to school. ML is our multi-language learners, and I'm sure everybody knows what Title I is, but that's for students who do not have the financial security that some of us are afforded. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Alan Daniel.
Good evening, Chair Kaplan, Ms. McManus, members of the board. I'd like to start by just saying just a very few words about the audit. In the findings of the audit, I would call your attention to whom the state places the responsibility. Under finding number 2, the board received. Under finding number 3, the board was not able. And under finding number 4, the board exceeded. Okay, it doesn't say the financial officer, the superintendent, anybody else. I sent you all an email earlier today. I know it's been a crazy day for y'all. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it. But I did the same thing that I did the very first time I ever addressed Winston Forsyth County School Board. I presented a proposal to save you all $5.678 million on the budget this year, or for next year, without cutting a single job. The way that works is you start at the top and you take 25% of the salary of anybody making over $200,000. From 150 to 200,000, you reduce it 20,000. 125 to 150, you reduce it 15. 100 to 125, you reduce it 10, and from 75 to 100, you reduce it 5. I didn't have quite the time because everything else going on, but I learned that a lot more people than I thought in the $75,000 to $80,000 range are student-facing employees, and I would encourage you not to take that 5% to them. Comparatively, if you wanted to save $5.678 million by cutting jobs, oh, by the way, that impacts 601 employees. If you wanted, and they'd still have their job. If you wanted to cut jobs to save that money, you would have to cut 142 jobs. That the number I use there is $40,000 in pay and benefits. That would directly, most of them are student facing, so it would directly impact the educational future of 2,840 students. It never ceases to amaze me that the people who do the hard work don't have anything to do with the fact that we're facing a $16 million deficit, but they're the ones that are going to pay the price, them and our students. Thank you.
Lee Childress.
Good evening.
Hey, Lee.
I'm speaking on the cuff tonight, so just wanted to come before you this evening in response to the long-awaited audit and the fiscal update that's coming. I haven't got to see all the information from the audit. I do know the information that will be shared tonight will not be very positive. I will start by saying this. I personally hate for anyone to lose their job. But if that must happen, I cannot, and I hope that you guys will not do that out of schools. I've gotten some reassurances that's not going to happen. But folks that are directly teaching our students do not need to have this happen too. As an EC teacher, I especially hope you do not cut from our EC department. This year has been really rough. I've gotten so many calls from fellow EC teachers who are done and are strained and are sad and are quitting. And next year, when we figure all this out, I really, really hope you guys think about the support that you're providing our EC folks, because at the end of the day, what we want to do is provide the best possible education for our kids, and those are the most vulnerable kids in this district. And we want to provide that, but we need the support. So I hope you would consider reinstating EC case managers next year. Thank you very much.
Our last speaker this evening is Michelle Jordan.
Good evening, Chair Kaplan, McManus, and the rest of the board. So I'm coming to speak about the fiscal audit that's getting ready to be released, and as Lee said, it's not going to be very positive. I've been hearing lots of rumors around, $16 million needing to be cut, principals being asked to give back instructional money this year, positions being looked at, and then I've been hearing this term being turned around that's called right sizing, basically oh, well, we're gonna cut just the staff off of allotment because we've been overfunding you. We're not overfunding anybody, right? We all know that the state has been underfunding, and we should have a lot more staff at all of these schools than what we do if we actually were having what had been happening 20-something years ago. And if we had still had our per pupil spending going up like it should be, and all of these things that we know are being cut. So I really hope that we can have some real transparency here, because going into these conversations in budget season, with us not knowing that this is what's been going on behind the scenes is very disheartening. It's affecting, I know that my position right now is 50% for next year, and I know that people are surplused. I've seen stuff that has also said that there are more surplus teachers than actual positions. So these are all nice ways of saying that we're riffing people. That's right. Okay? So we need to really be looking at who's our front-facing people. We've got to figure out what's going on financially. If this is why we're not going to the county commission and asking for more money, because we're embarrassed over what's going on in our district, we need to fix it because it's affecting our students and it's affecting our kids, and we don't need this on top of all that's happening federally and with our state as well. So I really hope that you guys make some, I know it's going to be really tough decisions, but we really look at who's facing the kids and that we don't need any more people cut. Thank you.
We have 5 items for discussion tonight. First, Dr. Heather Schwithrack, Director of Psychological Services, and Dr. Frederica Stokes, the Assistant Superintendent of Student Services, will update us on the 2025-2026 contract addendum with School Health Alliance.
Excuse me. Good evening, board members. Superintendent McManus, thank you for having me and this opportunity to present. First, I want to thank Dr. Daniel and the School Health Alliance for their partnership in serving our students and staff for the current 24-25 school year. Our partnership has definitely grown since its inception in 1997. Some updates for the current school year include Dr. Daniel and her behavioral health practitioners. We have assigned 4 of those practitioners to our district crisis response teams. So Dr. Daniel and her staff members attended our prepare training, and that is the crisis response that we use when we go out to each school. So they have been assisting us with crisis response and seeing those adults in the building that may have been impacted by the crisis. Additionally, her behavioral health practitioners have been added and assigned to several schools in the district, and in a few slides you will see all of the schools that those practitioners are serving. We have also added Glenn High School and Con Oak Middle School as mobile unit sites. And Dr. Daniel and several clinics assisted with Operation Zero Exclusion to assist with health assessments to prevent school exclusion for those students that did not have their health assessments. And lastly, I wanted to point out that the School Health Alliance does see a majority of students that have Medicaid. 45.3% of the students that they have seen so far this year have had Medicaid. But I also want to point out that 40.1% of the students that were served were uninsured. So they are seeing the students that have no medical assistance at all. And then the remainder of the percentage were those students that had either government or private insurance. And this slide is just capturing what it looks like to have a cohesive school health center, strong partnerships between the center and the district, a sound business model, and then high quality practice at each of those centers. In the comprehensive centers this year, Mineral Springs Elementary and Middle School, Winston-Salem Prep, Petrie Elementary, North Forsyth High, Ashley Elementary, Moore Elementary. At these comprehensive centers, students and staff are provided with medical, nutritional, and behavioral health services. And then coming soon, as you saw in the proposal, there is a proposed plan to have a comprehensive center at Old Town Elementary. Our mobile unit sites, again, this is the mobile unit that goes to the schools, and this mobile unit also provides medical, nutritional, and behavioral health services. That mobile unit goes to Parkland, Carver, Haynes Magnet, Con Oak Middle, the Career Center, Glenn High School, and East On Elementary. And lastly, the behavioral health host sites. I'm not going to go through the whole list of schools there, but you can see we do have behavioral health practitioners at each of these sites, and our behavioral health practitioners are seeing our students that have mental health concerns, and they are providing individual and possibly family support for those students. For the first 3 quarters, so this goes up to March 7th of 2025, so the first day of school to March 7th, you can see for behavioral health, School Health Alliance has had 2,951 visits with students, 20 visits with employees. And then medical services might be sick visits, immunizations, health assessments, and psychiatry. We do have psychiatrists that see students for medication management. So for students, so far, they've had 1,137 visits. For employees, they've had 6 visits. And you can see the grand total for all of these visits so far this school year is a little over 4,000. And lastly, our recommendation is for you to consider the approval of the School Health Alliance contract for the 25-26 school year at the next board meeting.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Yes. Board Member Kuhn?
Not a question. Just want to say thank you. I love the School Health Alliance. I think it does such a phenomenal job with our students and our staff, and I'm really excited that we're expanding.
Thank you.
Board Member Watts?
Again, accolades as well. As a former administrator who hosted a site, it was phenomenal to have you on day in, day out at that site for helping our students, also helping the students and parents who walked in after 3:30, after 4 o'clock. So again, thank you for all that you do.
Thank you for your support.
Yes, thank you so
Thank you.
much. Next, Karen Garman, Director of Healthful Living, will give us a Healthful Living Standards update.
Good afternoon, Chair Kaplan, Superintendent McManus, and members of the board. I am here to bring some revisions to our standards. It has been since 2010 before we've looked at the Healthful Living Standards, so it's certainly time for us to take a look at updating those. As with everything, this has been about a 3-year process, the review, revision, and then implementation. If you look at the slide, you can tell that we're in the implementation phase, with that starting next year in the 25-26 school year. Some of the reasons that were brought to the table for the update, besides it being outdated, data back to 2010, was to address some of our current health issues, improve our health outcomes, and then also get us in line with our national standards for healthful living. There are no major changes to the actual strands under health. So there's health component and a PE component. We'll address health first. ICHR is a new language. It was typically ICR. They just added healthy relationships in there to get it more descriptive. And then our biggest change is our last one there, where it used to be alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs, is now alcohol, nicotine, cannabis, and other drugs. And that is, again, for us to stay up to standard on what is actually going on, what are the trends in the community. So our PE strands did not change at all. They are still motor skills, movement concepts, health-related fitness, and our personal and social responsibility. The biggest change that we have, and the first time that we have seen this, is the actual grade spans. So now, only on the PE side, our students in middle school will enter with 6th grade and exit in 8th grade, and they will be looking to achieve that standard across that grade span. So immediately my team thought, wait a minute, we need some formative checkpoints between 6th to 7th to 8th. DPI beat us to it. So we have different things that students will know and be able to do at the end of 6th grade, moving to 7th, moving to 8th, to ensure that we actually meet the standards in these grade spans. Our teachers will be trained in the fall of 25, so as soon as we get back to school. And we have some teacher leaders I'd like to give a shout out that are helping with this. Matt Saldivari at Southwest Elementary and Danette Handy with Walkertown High School. Are there any questions?
So could you please share with us at a later date the actual checkpoints or what needs to happen from 6th grade to 7th grade to 8th grade? I'm just curious to see what they look like and how we will judge those standards.
Sure.
Or measure those standards, not judge, measure those standards.
Any other questions?
Thank you to Dr. Wilkins and Lisa Sugg for helping put all this together. I appreciate you.
Yes, thank you to you both. Next, Thomas Krantz, our Chief Financial Officer, will discuss the fiscal monitoring review of ESSER-funded employee bonuses.
So with the ESSER program ending, we were selected for 3 audits during the past 3 years. Recently, this is the biggest audit, which was on employee bonuses and ensuring that the money was spent on employee bonuses was in full compliance with the federal regulations. I'm glad to say that when you read the report, while they don't do an opinion on a per-school basis, it does say that during their review, everything was fiscally compliant. We did receive and obtained all the documentation that they requested. At one time, looking through 19,000 records to get what they asked for. So it's a good mark on other news. Any questions?
I don't think
Okay.
so, but thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And Mr. Krantz, I guess you can stay here.
Yes, I'm going to turn it over at this point.
Okay.
Tyler Beatty is
Yeah.
our partner on the engagement with Forvis. He's been here many years, and he and his team do a great job. So,
Yes, we're going to
Tyler,
discuss the fiscal year 2023-2024 audit report.
Yes, good evening. Thanks for the introduction, Tommy, and glad to be with the board tonight. We'll go through the presentation. Happy to go through it. If we can keep the presentation fluid, and if any questions arise while we're going through it, feel free to stop and ask questions. So this is a quick agenda. So we'll look at the discussion of the audit results. We'll review some highlights of the draft communications report to the board, review some financial highlights we put together, and then review the draft compliance audit. Our procedures are complete as a firm. We have submitted the communications report and the financial statements to the local government commission for approval. We don't expect any changes, but we can't share the final reports for public consumption until it's approved by the LGC. And we would expect that within the next week or so. All righty. So on this slide, we have a draft snippet of our audit. And again, this year, we're issuing an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. So the draft financial statements that you have, what this opinion says is that the information in there is presented fairly in all material aspects in accordance with our professional standards. It's important to just reiterate, we're presenting on effectively the accuracy of the information. We're not opining on the why of the information. It's more of the what of the information. So then we'll talk about the communications report that we typically present to the board and will be issued once it's approved by the local government commission. And this side report includes required communications that are required to be made by us as auditors to the board. It will include significant estimates and sensitive disclosures, which are outlined here. Importantly, if there were difficulties or disagreements that occurred during the audit, we would present that there. We didn't have any difficulties or disagreements. What we'll talk about in a bit, if there are any sensitive financial statement disclosures that are included in the financial statements, it's outlined in this report. We did notice budget violations in the current year, so that's outlined in this communications report. And then lastly, there is a management representation letter that was given to us by management that outlines the representations that were given to us during the audit. That's also included as an attachment in this communication report. All righty, so now we'll go through some financial highlights of the board for fiscal year 24. So I know we're a little bit behind, but we'll go through this. So this slide is trying to represent your revenue from your sources of revenue, your 3 main sources of revenue in fiscal year 24, fiscal year 23, and fiscal year 22. So the large blue bar is your state funding. That's the money that comes from the state of North Carolina. The gray bar is your county and other local funding. It does exclude capital outlay. And then the black bar is federal funding. So as you can see, right, the state funding, relatively consistent year over year. It represents the largest funding source for the board. And generally, the state funds dollars based on allotments. So whether it's positional or student allotments. So generally, if your student population goes up, you would expect state funding to go up and vice versa. Again, the gray bar, which includes county and other local revenue, it increased around $6.9 million in fiscal year 24 compared to fiscal year 23. So there was a big bump, or excuse me, a little bump from county and other local funding from 24 to 23. And then we get to the black bar. So in 2022, and again, this is your federal funding, and your federal funding in that draft financial statement, you have a full schedule of expenditures of federal and states awards that outlines all the federal awards received. But it was $146 million in fiscal year 22, $146 million in fiscal year 23, and then it dropped to $106 million in fiscal year 2024. So there was about a $40 million deficit, if you'll call it that, in federal funding between fiscal year 23 and fiscal year 2024 that the board had to recognize in the current year of operations. Of that funding, the Education Stabilization Fund, or the COVID money, was actually down $44 million. So if you looked at all your other federal funding other than that, it was actually up a little bit. While the Education Stabilization Fund went down $44 million, the board still received $50 million in fiscal year 24 related to Education Stabilization Fund money. So when we get to fiscal year 25, we would expect that $106 million to decrease significantly again because the Education Stabilization Fund expired in September of 2024. So a lot of volatility. There was a lot of good things going on with the COVID money as we've presented the past few years, and I think not just this district, but every district in North Carolina is dealing with the downwind of the COVID Education Stabilization money cliffing out, expired in September 2024. Alrighty. So this slide is effectively trying to present your governmental expenditures by purpose code as a percentage of total governmental expenditures. It does exclude capital outlay. So the blue bar is instructional services. The darkish gray bar is other or support services. So as auditors, we look for consistency in this ratio year over year. And again, you can see that the board spent 80.3% of all expenditures on instructional services, which was up a little bit from the prior years, and it's still and continues to be one of the highest ratios in the state. So, alrighty, so this slide is your general and other revenues fund balance. So kind of what we talked about, your federal funding went down $40 million. Most of that money, or some of it, probably half of it, was supplemented with general fund balance in the current year. So as we've discussed, you were building fund balance. I think every district in North Carolina spent fund balance in Fund 2 as we transition away from the Education Stabilization money. So fund balance for Fund 2 went down $12.5 million. From $25 million to $12.7 million. So there was some of that decrease, though, was related to a reserve for encumbrances at June 30th, 2024. So what that means is money was planned to be spent. It was encumbered as of June 30th, but it hadn't been spent. That restricts your fund balance as of June 30th, 2024. So you had 12.7 of total fund balance. There was around $5.4 million of unassigned fund balance. Alrighty, so this is a new slide that we put together this year. So What this slide is trying to represent is this is your general fund budget to actual, and actually what we did, so in your chart of accounts, you have a purpose code, which is how the financials are required to be presented. And it presents what's an instructional service, what's a support service. There's another item code in the chart of accounts that's your object code. The object code speaks to the type of expenditure that it is. So what we did is we looked at your expenditures in Fund 2 by your object code. So as you can see on the very left, that's your payroll expenditures, which would be your 100 object codes. And you spent $93 million in payroll in fiscal year 24. You only budgeted $83 million, which will speak to some of the aforementioned budget violations. Similarly, benefits, which are your 200 object codes and relate to insurance, retirement, other benefits that supplement the payroll expenditures. As you can imagine, it was up significantly as well at $38.3 million, but your budget was only $33. So you can kind of tell here the amounts you're spending and how it's related to payroll, with next to benefits is your general expenditures. So again, you spent $30.7 million in general expenditures, but you budgeted more than that. So you didn't overspend on general expenditures. Then the lower two is, which is your 300 objects codes. Then your maintenance and capital expenditures, which are your 400 object codes, and this would include things like repairs, maintenance, capital assets. Again, you budgeted around $12 million. You only spent $10.2 million in fiscal year 24. And then lastly is your non-program charges. And effectively what this is your payments to the charter schools. So there's a funding formula, but when the county sends you money, there's a funding formula that then the Board of Education sends money to charter schools. So out of the $150 million local appropriation that came from the county, in fiscal year 24, $11.7 million was shared with charter schools. So it was into the board from the county, then out from the board to charter schools. And then again, so this is same concept. This is your general fund, your Fund 2, which is the fund that the board has the most discretion over. Again, it's by object code, but instead of comparing to budget, it's comparing the current year to the prior 2 years. So very left side, your payroll, again, it went from $77 million to $93 million from fiscal year 23 to 24. Your benefits went from $31.7 million to $38 million in fiscal year 24. So a lot of payroll expenditures, a lot of benefit expenditures. But as you can see, your general expenditures, which are supplies, not supplies, but any type of expenditures, contracted services, it went down. It went from $37 million in fiscal year 23 to $30 million in fiscal year 24. Your maintenance, capital expenditures, which we expect to vary year over year depending on what type of repairs and maintenance is needed. But again, it went from 8.4 to 10.2 million. And then that last little graph on the very right, again, is your sharing with charter schools. So it was at 9.9 million in fiscal year 22, 10.3 million in fiscal year 23, up to 11.8 million in fiscal year 24, which again is just based on a sharing formula that looks at membership in Winston-Salem Forsyth County schools compared to attendance at charter schools. So I know that was a lot of information. I can keep going or pause.
Do we have any questions up to this point? Yes? Oh. Anybody? Okay.
Go ahead. All righty. So those were the financial information we'd prepared for you. The last piece is the compliance audit. So in addition to the financial statement audit, we're also required to perform audit procedures and issue opinions on 3 distinct items. Your major programs, so your federal awards, there's a selection process to determine of your federal programs what are determined to be major programs, and if there are major programs, we're required to do specific compliance procedures related to those programs. So in fiscal year 24, we identified 2 major programs. It was the Education Stabilization Fund, which was related to COVID-19. And as mentioned, that fund, the board received $9 million in that program this year. And then the child nutrition cluster, which received $30.9 million. And we didn't have any findings to report related to our procedures for those major federal programs. Next is our financial statement report, and this is generally called a yellow book report. So in addition to our audit procedures, we're required to perform specific compliance tests related to the board's compliance in accordance with government auditing standards. And as part of those procedures, we did have some findings that are outlined, and the board's response is in the back of the draft of the financial statements. But there were 3 findings this year. The first one being a deficit and special revenue fund balance, which is your Fund 8 fund balance. This is a recurring finding from the prior year. I believe and it will continue to be a finding until the special revenue fund is out of its deficit and fund balance. So this year, I was just checking to make sure that the special revenue fund actually had revenues over expenditures of $35,000. So it's effectively operating at a balanced budget, but it still has a negative fund balance, which is why it's a finding. Our second finding was related to the aforementioned budget violations, which are described in the back of the financial statements and kind of what we went over related to the general fund. And then lastly, we had a reconciliation finding related to certain adjustments during the audit process that were identified by us and had to be corrected in order to have the balance materially accurate. And again, that's outlined in the back of the financial statements, and management's response to those findings are also included. Then lastly, similar to federal programs, we had to do compliance procedures over state programs that are considered to be major. So this year, we had 5 major programs from the state that were identified as major that we had compliance procedures on. It was a state public school fund, career and technical education, school technology, driver training, and then the state capital infrastructure fund. We did have one finding related to those compliance procedures. There was a small over allotment. So when the state gives you a positional allotment, if you overspend on that allotment, it's required to be reported as a finding, but the board just reimburses the state subsequent to year end. And that was the instance that we were in related to the career and technical education program. That's all I have.
Any questions?
Yeah.
Vice Chair Bohannon?
So I will just, I have a few. I'll probably just ask a couple and then I'll let other people speak and then I might come back. So
I'd be disappointed if nobody had questions. So.
Well, I'm sure we will have several. So the first question I have, I think, well, before I start, I want to say that I think all of us understand that across the board, like school finance is difficult to do. Like it's probably, to me, it's extremely hard to be able to have all of these different pots of money and to have to make sure that everything works and everything is in the right place. And so I want to first acknowledge that. But I also will say that, you know, the first time that I joined the board and we went over an audit, what I was told is that one finding in an audit is problematic. Is that the case? Or does it depend on what the finding is?
I think any identified finding, no matter what it is, means there was a deficiency in internal controls. And I think processes should be implemented to rectify that finding.
Okay, so to that point, for the fiscal year 2023 audit, we had one finding. This year, for last fiscal year's audit, we have 4 in total, correct?
That's accurate.
And so one of them, I think probably just starting with the first one, is the same finding that we had from last year, but I see when I looked at the audit that the amount of the deficit is lower than it was last year. Could you talk about that a little bit and explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, so it probably would be most helpful to go to Exhibit 4. and actually probably on page 17. So you'll notice if you look at fund balance beginning of the year, you go over and you see positive, 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 and then there's one negative in the special revenue fund. So probably the best way to analogize this to is you've overdrawn a checking balance in one individual fund. It's in a negative position. So if you look at the total fund balance, right, of the entire board, you had $31 million of fund balance at the end of 23, or excuse me, on July 1st, 2024, which is your beginning of the year. And then on your end of the year, you still had a positive fund balance of 19.3 million. So if we look at the board in totality, there's a positive fund balance, but the special revenue fund's got a negative fund balance. So state statutes require that any individual fund standing on its own should not have a deficit in fund balance, or it's a reportable finding, which is why we presented it as such. So the reason the number changed is, again, in fiscal year 24, the special revenue fund had revenues over expenditures of right around $35,000. So the deficit in fund balance went down. They had a little bit of money this year, but they're still in a deficit. And that finding will continue until they're out of that deficit in fund balance.
Okay, so how could we have remedied that from being a finding? Like, is it like should we have moved money into that fund to potentially cover the?
Yeah, another good question. So if you go to page 14, this is again your major revenue, or excuse me, it's effectively a balance sheet, and it shows again your major funds in your by fund and then in totality. So the special revenue fund, some of child nutrition, capital outlay, and general fund all use the same cash account and they pool cash. And a big reason for the special revenue funds deficit and fund balance is they have unearned revenues, which are basically receipt of program money before they've been spent. So if you look at liabilities, unearned revenues, that's a significant component of liabilities, which is driving your deficit in fund balance. But I guess all of that to say, yes, the easiest way to correct a deficit in fund balance would be to transfer funds from presumably the general fund to the special revenue fund, which would show as a revenue on the special revenue fund and expenditure on the general fund, and that would satisfy the deficit in fund balance.
Okay.
Or increase your revenues in the special revenue fund or decrease your expenditures, one of those items.
Okay, I'll let my colleagues ask questions.
Okay, Board Member Carey.
And I don't know if this is for you or if this might be for Tommy, so I'm just going to
Okay.
ask, and whoever can help me, help me. I have been going through some of our previous finance committee paperwork and that kind of stuff. And is there any place that we would have been able to see this coming because I can't find anything on paper that tells me that this was a problem before?
It's a good question. I think the best report that, in my opinion, that gives you the best overview is the budget to actual comparison, showing you multiple months. So you see the pattern. From an accounting perspective, you're looking for consistency. You're looking for the same processes. You're looking for that continuity. And by looking at that, where you've got your budget to actual, and see not just this year, but what was last year. Last year gives you your best indicator. If you had looked, for example, the first year I was here, full year, we made a conscientious effort to get everybody, as that fit the rules, out of local funds and into state or federal. So when we're looking at, and this district hadn't done that, so it was a unique opportunity. We're comparing month to month, year to year, okay? But not at the level we do today. And all of a sudden, in the month of May, we have a profit. We went from a $17 million expense to a profit. Well, the profit's because when I submit the adjustment and it goes to DPI, it's retro. And it was toward the end of the year, so getting the big hit. And it was something, honestly, that just got forgotten until we saw it. Okay? Now, I hear the crowd out there. You got an $800 million bonus, a budget. You've got over 7,000 employees. You're processing just on PRCs 350, all of which have their rules. Grants are over 100. You're looking at a very complex organization. So while I don't say nothing about their jobs, I don't think they know the shoes that I stand in.
Order, please. Continue, please.
So the bottom line is, I think your budget to actual is your best in looking at it 1 year to the next year, so you get both comparisons, from month to month, and then compared to the prior year, I think is your best document. And what you would see, so like we discussed this afternoon, and let's go to a month where it's easy in my head. It's the month of December. You're looking at that report. If you saw that we had spent 80% of the budget, that's a red flag. You should see it be right at 50%. If it's not at 50%, the question should be, why is it not at 50%? And you could get an explanation where people put in blanket POs. At the beginning of the year, you have your highest number of POs. I mean, in Fund 2, at the beginning of the year, we had over $10 million of POs. Now we're down to a little bit less than $8 million, in line with prior years have been. So those are your best reports.
Any other questions? Board Member Barr.
And Tommy, I think this question is for you. If we go back to page 11, we could all look at that. I don't know if someone can bring that up for me. On the slide. Yeah, for the board presentation, and you may have said this, but just, once again, that's page 11.
Oh.
Yeah, help me understand, if I'm looking at this correctly, we budgeted 83.7 million, is that correct?
Correct.
But we spent 93 point something million. Help us understand how that happened, and let's try to do it, just in layman's terms.
So in a layman term, you're going to see where your salaries are going to be like bonuses, stipends, supplements, and your base salary. Those are the things that make up that salary number. If you recall, when we went into that year, we had the increase at the state, we had the local service longevity, we had, the push to raise it on the maintenance and the bus drivers from the state's 4+2 to 4+2+2. We wanted to have everybody that's on the teacher salary scale. Normally their bump is an average of. We wanted everybody to get 4%. Those items add up significantly. And those are the reasons that you saw that increase between the 83 to the 93.
Okay, I guess my question or my thought is, we wanted people to get the bonuses or the 4% increase, et cetera. But do we not have something in place to say, what, board, you may want this, but right now, when we look at our overall budget, I'm not quite sure if we can give that particular amount of increase. Does that make sense?
No, it is. And
Okay.
we look at any request like that comes in, we try to do a computation and see if we think it's affordable or not affordable. We predicted some revenues that just didn't materialize. And a budget, at the end of the day, is a best guess. I mean, we should have a solid basis for it, so it's not just pulling a number out of the sky. But at the same time, it's a best estimate. But that's the way, if I'm on the board, is just discussing the process we use in projecting revenues. You know what I'm saying? Listening to the methodology, asking us to do worksheets that show you the methodology we used in projecting the salary. And the salary, and you take like local, where you got all these other different items that make up the salary component, those generally aren't applicable to a pay raise. The pay raise is 4%. I mean, 2%, you know, whatever the percentage is. So a smaller portion of your dollar amount is all that's increased. So if you're looking at, or if we're presenting to you these work papers like that, that gives you, to me, is your best way to get the information on the methodology and the comfort level it works or doesn't work.
Board Member Kuhn.
Yeah. Well, sorry, one more thing.
I didn't get to finish mine.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right. You know what I hear, you know what you're saying, but I think what I don't understand is, I think you said something about predictors and all of that. How come, and you may want to take some time to think about this, but this is the question that's on my mind. How come we did not forecast, I guess, what we thought the predictors were and kind of carry it and follow it week to week, month to month, and say, wait a minute, hold it. We better stop because our predictors are not what we thought they were. That's, you know, that's me thinking and processing out loud. And then the second thing that causes me some concern and pause, and I'm trying to think if I should say this, is, let me think. I'm not quite sure the number of people that we have in the finance department, but do we need to go back and reorganize, do some training, whatever, to make sure that things are tight and things are efficient? Because, I don't know, once again, I'm not quite sure how many. It may be 20, maybe 30, it may be 40. But when you look at an organization of this size, you've got key people who are skilled, who should be skilled, to make sure that they protect a district this large from these particular dings and findings, you know? And I understand that we all make mistakes.
Right.
But I just think going forward, we've got to do a better job. So that's all I want to say.
And you're exactly right.
Yeah.
I mean, we failed.
And let me say one other quick thing, then I'm going to stop. I don't know, when you take the average salary of the folks who may be working in that department, and you compare it to teachers, I just wonder, what is the comparison?
I'll do the computation, because in the finance department, you got 37 people.
Okay.
The majority of those are on the classified pay scales. When you look at payroll, accounts payable, purchasing, I don't have big ticket numbers.
So 2 follow-up questions from Board Member Kuhn and Vice Chair Bohannon, and then a question from Board Member Watts.
I paused, and I apologize for that. I wasn't quite done. When I am looking through, and I wanted to check myself, so I did not speak out of turn. We do not actually get actuals as the board. We get budget, expense, encumbrance, balance percent spent, but we don't actually see actuals, correct?
Your actual, so you got budget, your expense, and your encumbrance. So expense plus encumbrance is your liability and/or your total expense that's on your statement.
Right. However, something doesn't seem, maybe it's not translating to us, or maybe me, I don't know. that maybe we could have a different kind of a report or something that
You
is.
could.
I think that could be helpful.
So I
moving
think we'll
forward.
try, what if we try this, Ms. Coon, that we do one that does salaries, so you have your funds, you have whatever period you want to say. You got salary, benefits, purchase services, contract services, and transfers. Transfers are primarily for the charter schools, and then everything else is pretty straightforward. You could also run it by object if you wanted to, but what if we start at the one level, just do the salary, and we show you the periods, and you can do the comparison. And then if you want to take it another spot, we can take it down to an object level.
Okay.
And the object is the lowest point that we capture the data.
Okay, thank you.
So one follow-up from
Okay.
Vice Chair Bohannon.
Yeah, I just didn't want us to get too far away from this. So, Tommy, you had mentioned something around, well, you had kind of talked about projections in that, we sort of base, your budget, like we're basing things on projections. But I guess my question is around, what are the barriers that are in place, in your opinion, that put us in a position where we are off relative to our projections? And is one of those variables related to the systems or the things that we're utilizing to be able to make those projections? Because I guess for me, what I'm thinking about is if you project, like you had said something when Board Member Barr was talking, that there were revenues that we had sort of kind of planned that didn't, you had used a word, I forgot what word you actually used, but you had said that basically we were projecting to receive some revenue that we didn't get, and then we had to account for that. But if we are basing whatever we're basing our kind of budgetary decisions on, like, is that shored up to the best that it possibly can be?
We're heading, when I got here, we had a finance department, very good people, but we didn't practice a lot of sound financial techniques, with the biggest one just being analysis. And it was the way that it was set up. I'm not criticizing anybody that was here before I got here. And take the budget. I knew it was going to be a 3 or 4 year project. You're not going to turn it around in 1 year. You got the ongoing business. And you see things, I think, and I think the superintendent would agree, we've gotten better with the budget process this year, nearly 100%. We're that close. I think you got to apply that to everything we do, and that's what we've been doing and doing the training. Unfortunately, you've got a conversion that's huge, and it's coming at a really bad time because we've got some momentum, but we're going to have to stop it. So now that we can devote our attention to the conversion. While we're doing that, to make sure this year end doesn't occur next year, we actually will start the reconciliations come in April. We'll run our trial balances. We'll begin what I call a soft close, so that when the auditors come in June, July, August, all we have to do is update those schedules. So rather than doing a reconciliation of 12 months, we're catching it. We have time to correct it. Because the thing about this, a lot of this could have been corrected if we had the additional revenues. And where did the revenues go? The biggest thing is our subs. We're paying out $1 million a month on subs. And, I thought that, that was all based on a private company and their markup and all. You look at historically, there's not big difference between us doing it and they do it. I heard a statement made by the superintendent when we presented in front of the county commission I think it was my first year. And she said, our problem wasn't the vacancies. Our problem was just getting people to come to work. We're averaging, Chris, if I say it right, isn't it 259 or am I higher? 259 vacancies with put subs per day. I mean, it's a issue that we're all on. But to answer your question, we have to get into a routine as a finance department that you know what we're doing, because every year you're doing that at this time of the year. You're doing this at this time of the year, and you're doing this at this time of the year. Number two, you standardize the reports. We're not sitting here saying, okay, somebody else comes in and I want to change the report to this or that. We're giving to the superintendent and to you as a board the report that you want. You pay us good money, we need to figure out how to generate that report that you want. Okay? And lastly, just solid communication between the finance department, the board, just everybody. Okay? No one department, the finance by itself can't take care of the world. But finance is a partner, and Ms. McManus is definitely a partner, so I'm not saying anything there. She's a solid partner. And this district has been solid partners, but we have to make those bonds stronger and make the process more consistent day to day to day.
Board Member Watts.
Thank you, Tommy. Again, to understand the complexity of your job, I think sometimes we just have to literally live in your department to really understand it. But thank you for trying to make it less cumbersome for us. But I do have two questions. And the first question goes back to what you just mentioned. I've advocated for this for a couple of times, years now. Our in-house subs, well, not in-house, our contractor subs, I think should be brought in-house. And two, when you look at the charter schools, I'll say this again, when we're giving $12 million
Right.
to charter school and it continues to increase,
Correct.
we've got to find a better way to, this is not for you, but as a district, we've got to find a better way to say to our charter school students and parents, we offer these services for you and we can do it better than a charter school. I think we've got to actually aggressively go after our charter school students and parents and bring them back into the fold. I think if we can cut that in half, that's $6 million right there,
Correct.
savings. So I want to uplift that, but I also want to uplift, what can you say to ensure us, if you can, or to guarantee us that we went from 1 finding to 4 findings? How can you say to us in confidence that this time next year we will not be in this spot?
I mean, from a process standpoint, it's just staying committed and true to the process. Okay? I think number two, it's continue to expand their knowledge base, continue to expand the training, and where we can make things simple. I mean, I'm a big believer in that, but continue just to do it. If we stay true to the course, okay? And I mean every day, every minute of every day, every hour of every day. If you stay true to that course, which is what finance should do, then we won't be in the same spot. Okay? Now, there's one thing, and I swore I would never have this comment made in public, but in this state, which is different than other states, and I heard that when I came in here, that pre-audit is there. That pre-audit's intended to not have this occur. So if somebody comes to me tomorrow and says, I have ABC, you have to fund it, and I know that line item has no funds, and that fund is so tight, it really doesn't have any cushion, I'm going to say no. That's what the statute says. You support me, I'll make sure we don't have it happen again. Now, let me say, for the record, of all the superintendents I've dealt with, and I've dealt with a lot, and CEOs, That lady right there is the one that's been the most attentive to finance and wanting to make sure we do it right. So if there's any dinging to be done,
Well,
it needs to be directed at me. She does, I've never seen a superintendent do what she does on finance.
Tommy, thank you for that. I do have one quick question, though, because a pre-audit makes sense when you're talking about, and tell me, I could be wrong, but when you're talking about non-personnel cost, contracts and things like that. With our overage, so if you look at this slide that's up there right now, the general expenditures, we actually looked like we were okay there. But how do you, the pre-audit, I know you do that if you're adding positions, but in the case of what happened here was with the ending of ESSER and keeping certain positions, which I'm going to cover in my next
Right.
presentation, like keeping positions that we had put on ESSER but that we did not want to remove last year, that was not your fault. That's where the overage is here that we went into fund balance, but a pre-audit, correct me if I'm wrong, a pre-audit would not help that, correct?
No, ma'am, because the pre-audit's on positions. So it's on every dollar that we as a system spend that there's the pre-audit requirement. But I'll give you another example. So we do the EPA Brownsville grant. The money comes in, and I see this all the time. As soon as it comes in, we're saying we're ready to spend it. Let's go spend it. Accounting regulations say, one, the revenue has to be measurable, okay? The award letter makes it measurable. Number two, it has to be available. It ain't available until y'all vote on it. I have to get the superintendent's blessing, and then I've got to get everybody on the board's blessing. So now, where I talked about purchasing and the feeling of being an obstructionist, and here's the thing, I could have the best intents in the world, but if we had spent that money, okay, and it turned out we needed to send it back, that's a $700,000+ check that's having to go back.
Board Member Brown-Gaither.
I want to just preface this, first of all, to say I am not a financial person. That's not my forte. I'm going to preface this whole conversation, even though I'm a math teacher, believe me. Okay. I recall, and when I look at this particular chart right here, I can see that it's all in payroll and the benefits go along with the payroll.
Yes, ma'am.
And then, of course, charter schools. That's
Correct.
the three areas. I can remember back in the workshop when we were discussing payroll for our classified, and our superintendent wanted to bring us up to the mid-level. We were having problems with our bus drivers. And I think the board, we were like, okay, we can see that we want to be up in the middle, because we were behind everybody else.
Right.
So we did agree to it. It sounded really good. Looking back now, it was a very lofty goal, and I talk about this all the time to my board members. I don't agree with lofty goals.
Right.
I think we need to be way more realistic. And so when the superintendent said, I would like to be here, you were like, okay, we will have to, in order to be there, you brought all these charts and said, this is how we have to raise this.
Mm-hmm.
And we were trying to meet that
Correct.
need. And again, so obviously by doing that, that's where we got into some of this problem.
Correct.
As far as the payroll, because the benefits go with the payroll.
Right.
And the other one was trying to keep those that were funded by ESSER, even though they knew it was a 3-year job and they wouldn't have a position. We tried to keep a lot of them on board. Again, a lofty goal, but not a realistic goal.
Right.
And I'm sure every district has that problem with the ESSER dollars.
Yes, ma'am.
Because Alex and I was at a conference this past week, and we heard it from all over the country. Everybody's having that problem. So I don't want to lay the blame on you or your staff because, again, it was that lofty goals, and I think schools have a tendency to do that. They love lofty stuff. And I'm more realistic. If we can't do it, we can't do it. Okay, we're gonna have to talk to the bus drivers. We can't afford it. You know, and I brought to you, and I must admit, one of my little lofty things was like, can we pay them every 2 weeks instead of every month? Because maybe we can get more. We may not be able to do that, and we need to be realistic and say, here's the item. So that's my 2 cents. I'm sure you all didn't ask for it, but that is it.
Thank you. Yes, Board Member Crowley.
So with us investing in the new financial system, because I think it should be noted that we're working on a 50-year-old system.
Yes, ma'am.
That has not been the best for producing the reports.
Correct.
That we need. Do you foresee improvement in this area with that investment that we're making in the new?
Eventually, yes, ma'am. The 6 months, it'll take, you should see improvement month to month, but it'll take at least 6 months to really be ready to say you're fully converted to the new system.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, sorry. I noticed that in one of the findings, it talked about how we closed late last fiscal year. Like, if I'm reading this correctly, we didn't close on time, and so that potentially impacted, you know, some of these issues. And I remember kind of us kind of being behind a little bit, but Tom, if you could, you know, why did we close late? Like, what were the variables that contributed to?
I just think we weren't ready or just got away from us. Right now, that's why I asked y'all to be here monthly, every meeting, because we as a district do a lot of budget amendments and transfers.
Right.
And honestly, when you combine them all up together, it's so large that it's difficult to read it and really understand what you're reading. I mean, I know it and I struggle at times. So by doing it at each meeting, there's no excuse. So right now, we've got the next budget amendments ready to be handed in tomorrow. Normally, finance is waiting that 30 days and you wait to the last minute and then it's away from it. It's gone. Month end's come and gone. That's what happened. We can't let that happen again.
Thank you.
Yes, Board Member Coon.
It might go on all night. Who knows? No. So this goes to one of the findings and to something that Board Member Barr asked. In the finding 3, it does say that we agree with the finding and that the accounts were primarily due to staffing shortages discussed previously. And Board Member Barr asked, and I believe I've asked several times, do we have enough staff? So how do we have enough staff, but we have staffing shortages
So
causing?
at the time the audit was being conducted and the statements done, Melanie Knuckles was with the district. Melanie had been here a number of years, and Melanie left the district. So we went to a vacancy position. We interviewed for that director's position. You do need to have, because of the complexities of this district, you have to have a sound accounting background and understanding of those rules. And there was a time that there was a gap in that point. Today, we got Deb Anderson in there on a temporary basis, but she's working for us and doing an outstanding job. And she's interviewed and, you know, we'll see. But you had that brief time, Ms. Coon, where that was the gap. That was the gap, and we've closed that gap.
Any other questions?
I have one more question.
Yes, Board Member Barr.
You know, we've been asking for a while, what is in our fund balance? And I assume, is that on page 10?
Page 14.
Okay, well, I was looking at page 10 where it says fund balance, but it's page 14?
Hold on. Well, yeah, the slide.
Okay, I was looking at the slide. So
Right.
is that right? 5
Correct.
million? Okay.
So when you're looking at this in the middle for 2023 in the blue,
Right here.
which would have been our last audit before this one, the total, that's both restricted and unrestricted, okay, was $25.2 million. Then you see the swing, as Tyler said, this year we're down to 12.7, of which 5 million is unassigned, so you
Okay.
could do
So
the
I was right.
expenditure.
Okay, so if an emergency came up, if an issue came up that we needed to pull some money, we have $5,385 and, $580 to pull from, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, that's unrestricted.
As of June 30th,
As
the
of June-
number hasn't gone down. Anything that's
Of
gone
last
up.
year? Okay, I wonder how much we have this year. Well, let me ask you this, how much do we currently have this year?
I would say we're basically flat, but I'll get you a report on fund balance.
Okay.
So have we
Right,
made any expenditures out of our fund balance this fiscal year?
You've had your constructions that were going on that had been budgeted by the board, and that's been the only thing, has been those type of projects.
But that's things that that we voted, like if we have approved, we would have
That's
approved it.
correct.
Thank you.
But we have right now nothing that the board has voted on that would place anything on the capital side into a restricted category.
Okay.
And I think this is my last comment. I'm not in competition with Ms. Kuhn tonight. I guess it just kind of causes me just to pause a little bit when, and I don't want to put you on the spot or your department, but I guess this is why we were here and people elected us to ask the hard questions and make the difficult statements. But not to be able to say, you know what, this is our fund balance as it is now. So, I don't know, maybe I'm a little bit naive to district budgeting and planning, but I would just think that we should be able to say, this is how much board members that we have currently in our fund balance.
That's
just
a
my
number
thought.
we could pick up every day, but right now, the way the statute reads, we can't spend money unless we have revenue. Fund balance is not something that we can count, we as a district can't count as revenue. That's why you have the write-up that you got. That comes through the appropriation. The only one that can appropriate funds at the end of the day, which is the authority for me to write a check, is y'all. So at that point, I've got to know my fund balance, and you know what I'm saying? So, but we can pick it up, just like I do cash balances daily, I can get my fund balance daily.
Okay, so our last discussion item is our superintendent, Tricia McManus, and she's going to give us a fiscal update.
Stay close, just in case, yeah, just in case there's a question. Good evening. Thank you. So, so the charts today, I would say, as I start, were very clear, and I think the biggest thing about all of this is, and I'll say this as we go through this presentation, is that the funds that were utilized for whatever it was were for good reason. The controls that we have in place, which Tommy has said will be fixed so that we can project correctly, so that we can monitor correctly, and we will know by May or before, we would know as we go if there was ever a time we needed to ask the board for additional funds. And that's the cleanup that has to occur. As far as the way we've spent the money, that you're going to see some of that within my presentation. What I will say before I get started is I know there's questions about allotment process versus what I'm going to show tonight with savings. And so anytime through this, Chris or Tommy can also come up, but I think it's very important that we understand that. When I talk about budget savings this evening, I am not talking about school allotments at all. And so I've got a little bit to describe with that. And when we talk about right sizing, by the way, it's not school right sizing, it is central office, and we've talked about that. We've been comparing our central office the different categories of people, the different layers of people, and what would a right size of that look like. And so I'm going to describe that. But I do want to say this. In the last 3 years, and I'm looking at some notes, and I will be both looking at notes and you to make sure I don't miss anything this evening. But we, in 3 years, have lost about 142 state positions, but have not decreased those at that amount because that would be very impactful to schools. We've allotted 149 more positions than allotted by the state. And actually, on our local dollars right now, I think we have about 177 teachers. I think something very important about this is that we need more allotment. I mean, at the end of the day, we need more allotment to do the work. Because as you'll see in one of my slides, the allotment, because of ADM, has decreased. So the allotment, the funding we're getting from the state has decreased. But if you look at the needs of our students and the work that we're trying to do in schools for them, that has not decreased. That has increased even though enrollment has decreased. Some of the needs are greater. So I wanted to say that. I will say as we went into this year's allotment process, there will be the teachers that are surplus, which by the way has been since the beginning of the time. When I was a principal, I used to hate going to we would call it the unit meetings, because if I didn't have enrollment or it decreased, I would potentially lose a teacher. They wouldn't be lost from the district. They would be going somewhere else that had increased enrollments. It's just part of the yearly process. So when we talk about, what I will say is, there's not going to be a RIF at the teacher level and classified employee at the school level, because those people will be moving to where there might have been an increase at another school, or honestly through the vacancies that occur between now and the time the school year starts because of retirements or a family moving or things like that occur every summer. And so Chris can talk more to that, but I wanted to say those few things that this is not what my budget savings are going to be about. It's not about anything happening at schools. If anything, we're trying to keep the savings that we have found away from schools. Is it going to impact people? Yes. But it is not impacting people that are school-based people that are in direct service of kids. So I wanted to start with that. And also, I also wanted to say about the absences. I think we have control over absences. I think as we work to create strong culture every day, I mean, people have to take time. If you're ever a parent, you're going to need to take time with kids. If you are if you get sick yourself, which this has been major flu season, which is why we're waving at kids instead of shaking their hands, which is terrible. I hate that. And then just so people are going to people get a certain number of sick days. And so that's built in for a reason. So I'm going to say that the good news is our vacancies have decreased over time. This year, I think we're at a 97%. Last year, we're about 95%. So that's another thing. I will say that a few years back, when we had so many vacancies, we were using those dollars from the lapsed salaries to really do a lot of things that we can't do anymore either. So when you think it's a lot of different factors as I get into how we are here, but what we're going to do about it, and I think that's the biggest thing. So again, Tommy and the finance department are going to create structures, and what I'd like to do is get the board, here are the reports that you can expect to see that will not only do the projections, but then will also do the budget to actual and do that. And he's already asked to add that to every board meeting, not just finance committee, but every single board meeting, so that we can be correct in those projections. I will say, as I get started tonight as well, we've had someone from the state that Tommy's been working with, a former CFO, who was in a very large district, who has been supporting Tommy also behind the scenes, double checking numbers and all of that. So I feel like that is also, we spent a few hours with him just 2 weeks ago looking at everything and figuring out, are the numbers I'm presenting tonight accurate? And so that's how we're going to get started. So here we go. So basically, back in January of this is a little bit of another recap. I wanted to go back to 2019 around fund balance, just to show the fact that, and Tyler mentioned this, but that districts across the country's fund balances really went up during ESSER. And I think that's key, because what ended up happening is we put things onto ESSER like HVAC repairs, like you all remember those things, like classroom coverage. We did things like have teachers that were covering classes. We paid them more. We did things like that. Additional PD that had we not had those dollars, we would have been using local dollars to do some of that, the things that we needed to do. And so that balance went up high. Well, without those funds, unless we cut every single thing out we were doing, they would be coming back down. And so to me, it's a pretty easy mathematical situation here. But the other things, and Tommy mentioned some of this, he presented this in January of 2025, just recently, that some of the things that we did last year that were for good reason, and when you look at those personnel costs, he mentioned some of these. The transportation one is not necessarily personnel costs, because there's also the state, if your efficiency rating is a certain thing, but based on your ridership for what you're spending, you can lose funding now in transportation. But all of these things are contributed to the overages. And so Tommy mentioned those, so I'm not going to repeat those, but I think that's important that we realize there's nothing on here that I wouldn't want to do again. What I would want to do again is make sure, or do right this time, is make sure that the board is aware every step of the way that these expenses are going to they're going to take us over in fund balance. And that's where the correction needs to be made. Again, if you look recently, these are headlines that I've seen just in 2 weeks from different districts that are facing the same thing. And as Board Member Brown Gaither said, when they were out of town, and we were on a Zoom meeting on Sunday, Board Member Kaplan, Chair Kaplan and I, with Council of Great City Schools, and many districts are facing that same thing. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, we tried to prepare for it coming into this year, last year, by making reductions for this year. And so I don't know if you remember, but in the spring, we went through a whole process to reduce then positions that had been ESSER funded and other central office positions in preparation of this year. And so that continues to be. But what I'll say is, as a result of this, our goal is to have a balanced budget and to get our fund balance back where it needs to be. And what I'll say is, you all have said you want to keep $7 million in there, like you want to have that cushion of $7 million. My goal is that we get us back, and Tommy's, all of ours, get us back to where not only are you at the 7, but you do have money in case you do need to spend something. Right. So we wanted to get it at least to about 10, so that you can always have, and that's for unrestricted, so that if we need to put gates, fences up like we did a couple years ago around some of our playgrounds, we could come to the board and you could have that wiggle room while also keeping the 7 million. So when I get into our savings tonight, when it says, like people have said, 16 million shortfall, that is not accurate. That's what happens with the game of telephone when you share with your building leaders information and central office leaders, and they repeat it incorrectly. And that's not a dig. That is just factual. That's just how we take information. But it's a cost saving. So it's not a shortfall. It's how do we actually balance and then put money back into fund balance. So you'll see that in just a minute. And so basically, we are committed to ensuring long-term financial stability of our school district. That's what this is all about. So we can continue providing high-quality education for our students. And we have to streamline operations, which you're going to hear some of that, while maintaining the essential services that directly impact students. And so here are some of our cost drivers, which you've already heard some of these. But there are a number of things that are leading up to what we're having to do with our budget savings. And so ESSER ending, we've talked about that. Loss of state funding for ADM, that is a reality. We've lost 3,000 students in the past few years. That is a reality. Board Member Watts, you are absolutely right. We need to get our children back into our district and not send $12 million out to charter schools. And so, yes, so the employee compensation increases, the instructional support positions on local dollars, like we have many positions on local dollars if you look, because we are not getting the allotment at the level we need. I'll just give you an example of some of the positions that are on local dollars. We have all of our data managers, because that code, there's not enough in that code for all of your other people that you get allotted for out of the state code. We do have testing coordinators. That is something a few years ago that schools asked for. It's a classified position, but those are all paid on local dollar. I said earlier, we have about 200 teachers on local dollars because we haven't wanted to make those school-based cuts at the rate that we need to based on what we're receiving from the state. So there's many reasons for that. And then last but not least, the inflation cost. And I think everyone can relate right now what that looks like with our own electric bills and other things like that. I mean, there are some major inflation. Tommy just gave me a quote today that inflation costs from this year to next will be going up 2.9%. Is that accurate, Tommy? Did I get that right? 2.9%. Okay, that is the prediction. So I think again, we're all dealing with the same thing, and we should not have to be. We really should not have to be. And I think what it showed is the federal funding we received that has gone away was really imperative to support our students post-pandemic, and we're still supporting our students post-pandemic. And so basically, to make sure we understand where we're headed, I'm going to go over what our next steps are. And so basically, I want to make sure that everyone knows, that you all know, that any decision we make is going to be based on keeping our students at the center. And so that's why when you do see some position reductions, because that is going to be in here, it is true. They are not school-based positions. They're positions that are part of central office, which, by the way, all these positions, if there's anybody in them, because some of this is through attrition and some of it's through vacancies that have occurred throughout the year. And to be honest with you, we've been at this for the last 2 years as positions have become vacant. There are many that we have said, let's not fill that, let's merge it. We've been working toward this day, is what I will say. And so we've got one overarching focus, and that's to keep students at the center, but we must ensure long-term financial stability, balanced budget, and a healthy fund balance. We will continue to focus on these 5 areas. I don't need to explain these. Our budget last year was around these 5 key areas and will continue to be. This just shows a little bit of that picture about ADM being reduced and personnel continuing to continue to be increased. But you can see toward the last 3 years, we're trying to stabilize that and start to go down as we prepare. Now, these are actual filled positions, just so you know as well. Here are some of the groups, the licensed professionals in these positions, and it shows you where, like, what has been flat over time, which you can see at the bottom 2 lines of your psychologists and your librarians. I know we call them media coordinators, but that's what they're called in the report. And then you can see some of the other positions. The ones that are moving up in the yellow, which are other professional, are positions, let me make sure I get these right, are positions like social workers, audiologists, occupational therapists, and then non-instructional managers. But you can see, I mean, those increases, the needs of our students are increasing. If you look at the consultant supervisor, those include roles such as IFs, MCLs, which are your teacher leaders at your schools, so IFs are at your schools, magnet coordinators, which are in schools, and then instructional directors, which are central office, and some program managers. And so those increases, when we talk, again, trying to not impact school people, it's going to be an impact at central office. This also is one more slide that shows the picture of the declining enrollment, and then also how much we're spending or what that looks like with salary benefits. But I think that the audit presentation was very clear. That was very clear to paint this picture. So then what are our plans? So that's where I'm going to spend the next few minutes. Are there any questions so far before I go into our plans about how we're going to create savings as we finish this year and as we go into next school year? Any questions before I keep going?
Yes, Board Member Coon. I know that you have said, student-facing positions, we're protecting those. I've had some questions, and I felt like I wanted to ask this publicly. Yes. About some of the positions that are based in schools that may be being reduced to like 50%. How does that play?
Do you have any specific ones? What we can
An
do?
instructional facilitator.
Okay, so there was a formula change with just with two groups, assistant principal and instructional facilitator, that's it. And that is because we are way over allocated, number one, in assistant principals, way more than we are given, we are paying for, and the only place to pay for that is on your local dollars. And then IFs, we have both of those roles in very small schools. And Chris says it way better than I can, but it's small schools, as wonderful as they are, I wish we could change our allotments at the state, because as wonderful as they are, they cost so much more because you're not getting what you need. And so what we said is, if you are a very small school and you have both, like at the elementary level, both an AP and an IF, we need to have one. And I think, and Chris, I may be getting that wrong. Do you want to say something at the middle about that? That's the only formula change. The other ones have stayed the same. Every formula has stayed the same. And I will say one thing that I forgot to say at the beginning. Chris, in the allotment process, actually reduced the teacher-pupil ratio at 4th and 5th grade and at middle school, so that when the 10th day count comes, we don't need to be moving people around. And so that is something, and Chris, do you want to say more to that as I continue, before I continue?
Unfortunately, instructional facilitators are not allotted by the state. It's unfortunate, but they do not. So when we're looking at our total positions, they're in the teacher count. So the superintendent mentioned we have 100, a little over 100. That's just the regular ed teachers. That doesn't include the teachers from ML, IFs, and other things that go on local. So when we were looking at the big picture to not impact class size, that's why the decision was made to do 0.5 IF for elementary schools under 500 students, because they still have an AP.
Vice Chair Buchanan, would you like to ask Dr. Weikart?
Dr. Weikart, I'm sorry. Could you please return to the podium? Thank you. I know, get excited. So I have a couple of questions that I think I wanna get answered before we go into the kind of budget pieces, because I think the community, there are some things that we've talked about that the community kind of needs to, I want the community to understand. So first, what does ADM mean?
ADM is average daily membership. That sometimes will be confused with enrollment. Enrollment is how many kids we have on any given day or register for school. Average daily membership is the calculation the state does for students who arrive at school. In other words, they E1 is what we say, so they show up. So let's say, for example, the 20-day count. If a student shows up on day 10, they only count 0.5 for us on average daily membership. So if a kid shows up, and they also do a 40-day count. So if a kid, once again, shows up on day 10, for the 40-day count, they show up as a 0.75. So we often think that we're allotted based on how many kids there's in the district. And that's actually just, it's like a square and a quadrilateral. They're similar, but not the same.
Got it. That's a good explanation. So when does the state make that determination?
So they just changed this, all right? In the past, they would do a projected enrollment or projected ADM. They would give us some positions, and then on the 10th and the 20th and 40th day, they would do a calculation. And in December, they would, whatever we were supposed to lose, they'd cut us by half. So it was very hard to plan that way because you didn't really know what you had. Starting this year, was in this year's budget, they're starting what they call planning in arrears. So we know, once they come out with our planning allotment, which we suspect will be around 50,600, it'll be a little less. We'll know exactly how many positions we'll have for all of next year. That is a good thing, because this way we can actually plan a little more appropriately.
Okay. And so to that end, at what point after that decision is made, does it impact our money?
So this coming year, we'll have our planning allotment. They'll give us projected allotments, and they'll have to wait for the state budget the state General Assembly and the governor to agree on a budget, and then we'll get our budget allotments. That, of course, can vary. This year we got lucky on July 5th. In other years, we've got it as late as October or even November. And they don't allot us our positions fully until they get actual approved budget. So like in FY24, everything was loaded in November.
Got it. So 2 more quick questions. The superintendent mentioned assistant principals, and you've already said instructional facilitators are not allocated by the state. I've asked you this question before, but I'm going to ask it publicly. How many assistant principals are we allocated by the state?
Approximately 100.
And how many do we have in the district?
I apologize, I said that correctly. I
Yeah.
said that incorrect, I said it backwards.
Yeah.
We approximately get 50 APs allotted, and we have approximately 150 APs. We fund 100 either on local dollars or a different PRC that's permissible by the state.
Got it. Thank you.
1 month for every 99.7 child, and don't ask me how they get a 0.7 child.
Thank you.
Good. So any type of allotment questions, ADM, all that, Chris is your guy. He lives that every day. And he meets with every school as part of this process with the area superintendent and other people like Title I's at the table, your arts folks, to make sure that they're all giving input into that process. But at the end of the day, there are formulas. And I was talking to someone just yesterday about, with ESSER, there was a school that asked for a second counselor. And with ESSER, it was yes, but now post-ESSER, based on our district formula, that school would not qualify for that one. Does the school need them? Do every school need more counselors? Absolutely. But we've been saying this through our budget process, if you're going to add that, then something else has to come off. And so, and again, as we saw tonight, it is less about the non-personnel cost, and we've continued to try to reduce the non-personnel costs, but it really is about your personnel. And so here are the savings plans. And so here is, when we shared this with principals, and we met with all central office directors, executive directors, coaches. I've met with these two slides with that I'm showing you with people that will end up potentially being impacted by some of these decisions. And I will tell you before I start that those meetings, especially with the central office leaders, they were giving ideas in the room at the end of it for things. And they were talking about back in it might have been 2012, where there was a similar district was facing something similar, and what types of things they did. So we have amazing people in our district, and I just want to start by saying that. So the shifting or the reduction of central office positions is really just to help support our sustainable future as a school system. So here are some of the things we're doing, and we've the freezing of spending. And so all of our departments met with Tommy and Lynn and Deb and looked at every account and what is it that we could pull back, like in the supply item, if there's something we don't need. With schools, and it was said, and I want to make sure this gets stated correctly, when I met with principals the other day, when I told them about this, and I said, at some point of the year, we usually probably around May, start pulling back some of those dollars. I said, would any of you be able to look at your budgets now, and if there is something that you believe that you can give back now, that you know what you're going to spend, you know what's encumbered, and the exact message was, if it's encumbered, you can't give it. If you need it between now and the end of the school year for kids, you can't give it. But if there's anything you could give back now to put back into the budget, would you do so? And I'll tell you so. And then Dr. Barnes-Jones sent out a Google form. I looked at it on Sunday, and schools, some were like, I don't have any. Some had spent it all, except maybe $100, and they're like, please don't take the $100. So we left that. But some said, I can give you $1,000, give you $2,500. I mean, just in that one exercise, and it wasn't even all the principals. Some said they couldn't, but it was about $50,000 to return. There is no principal that should say, I'm not going to be able to finish funding a resource, because that's not what was said to them. And that is, you can see very clearly in the Google form that they understood that. We have already stopped taking home company cards. We sent a memo. We started with senior team that right after spring break, and just not taking cars home, but parking them in specific spots of the county that are close, like in our county, close to home, close to on a school site or on a district site, like our parking lot. That is a substantial savings, and so that has already started. Using state funds for summer school. So one of the things that is the last 3 years, we have had these amazing, large summer programs. We haven't always had the best attendance at all of them, but we've had large summer programs where we were doing K-5, we were doing enrichment, we were doing STEM, we were doing all these things. This summer, we are bringing that back in to do second and third grade for reading. And then we're doing senior squeeze. And then I think there's one other, is there one more, Paula? And then and credit recovery, because we need to make sure our students are ready. So that is all going to be paid on state dollars, where every summer a massive, like the majority of that's paid on local. I think last summer we probably spent $4 million on local on summer school. So eliminate out of, we've already started all of these things, but eliminating out-of-state travel. If there's a grant, like the magnet grant, and they need to go because they got that grant and there is something coming up they need to go to, and all of it is taken care of on a grant, that travel can be done. If there's any travel that was planned for local dollar expenses, we've asked for that to stop. The inter-district travel, we spend about $250,000 a year just on the inter-district travel. This does not mean itinerant people that have to go to school. This does not mean coaches that are out supporting schools, but anybody that doesn't absolutely necessarily have to go to a school to provide a specific service. We're asking them, do that on a, it could be on a Zoom. I mean, do it on a Zoom. Do something where you're not turning in that mileage reimbursement as much. If you look at freezing new hires, that has already been in the works at central office. We started, I think was it the beginning of February? Beginning of February, but there were many throughout the year that if the position became vacant, there were times we did not fill that and people absorbed the responsibilities. So that's not a new concept, but we have completely frozen it starting at the beginning of February to get through June 30, to get through this fiscal year. So that's another thing. And then we spend, we have what we call long-term subs and we also have building-based subs that we gave schools during COVID because there were more absences during that time when we returned. And so we gave every school just a building-based sub. We did reduce that last school year to only this year, it's only tier 1 schools. This current year, we're reducing that altogether. Tier 3. I'm backwards on the MTSS process. It's tier 3, our most intensive support schools. They have the building-based sub. What we're doing with those right now is we're asking them to go into, if there is a vacancy, because right now, if you call in a sub and the sub comes and the building-based sub is not needed there, yes, it's great to have the extra pair of hands, but those positions are about $200 a day. And so what we're saying is let's put those people into a vacancy so that we're not double spending. The other thing is on our long-term subs. The other thing we asked principals, we didn't just, replace long-term subs, because again, that's $200 a day, but for the last 7 weeks of school, we asked principals if there are any long-term subs that you have in your buildings where you do, it would be helpful to you for us to send to you a certified person from the district who is certified, hopefully, preferably in the area that they're going into. How many of you would want to take advantage of that? So we didn't just say we're doing this. It's how many would you want to take advantage? And we have over 30 that we can do that, which is substantial when you think about 7 weeks, 30 people, $200 a day. So those are all things this year. Our goal this year, and then again, just our spending. Tommy balancing the budget, Tommy moving people and doing all of that. We'll have about an $8 million savings at the end of this year. And so that should be where we don't need to. And again, if we are wrong in this calculation, you will know that way before the end of the year that we would need to go back into fund balance. But with the $8 million, that's even higher than what we are actually predicting needing to save. So we've inflated the number to be on the safe side of what we're saving. So our goal is about an $8 million this school year, and the things that I've described will get us to that point this school year. Okay, so that's current year ending fiscal year 24-25. So going into next school year, what we want to do going into next school year is, again, we don't want to just balance. We still have positions. Remember I told you we've still been saving, keeping positions. And so we haven't just taken all the positions and they're now gone. So there's still been some positions. And so we need to still make reductions. and we want to add money back into the fund balance. So this year, we might not do that. This year may be a break even, and we have a budget, a balanced budget. Next year, we want to actually be able to end with a balanced budget and add money back into fund balance. And remember, I'm trying to keep that goal of about 10 million, so you can keep the 7 million in unrestricted that you always want to keep and have some flexibility. So here is our goal for 16 million, and that is to reduce central office staff. It is to do furlough. It's funny, someone in the audience last week in one of our meetings said, we did furlough days for everybody in the district years ago, and I said, yeah, we're not doing that. But we have, as a senior team, met, and we've talked about the fact that we are gonna take furlough days. Obviously, I will take the most. I make more than the people on my team. So that's gonna be part of this process because we feel we need to do that as well. We already redid the restructuring of Virtual Academy. Kingswood and Main Street, we already talked about that. We can't purchase the property where Kingswood is, as you know. And so we are moving Kingswood. We are merging Kingswood Main Street. We have an amazing design team right now that's been coming together to talk about the future of this alternative learning center and what all could it be. But that's saving us that $700,000 a year in that rent. And it's going to actually be a great program for our students all in one facility. Reducing staff cell phones and take-home cars. You are going to see a reduction in cars. Hopefully we can sell back, or I think that's it. Can we, Lauren, sell back some of those cars? But just even reducing cell phones in half. We have a lot of cell phones in our district, but kind of we're using formulas for all of this. Who absolutely needs to be contacted after hours? Who absolutely doesn't have access to a phone during the day? Like there's things, and then with the cars, it's another formula. So we're reducing. Those two reductions will be a big savings for the district. The ESSER, I already talked about the ESSER-driven building-based subs, which is they're just in Tier 3 schools, so that's about 25 going into next school year. And then bringing back the sub in-house, what we figured out, I know Tommy mentioned earlier, it didn't seem like that much of a difference. What we've estimated to be the operational cost versus a sub was about 3 million is what I've been estimating. Chris, does that sound right? And Tommy, I know you've been meeting with them. Do you want to clear that up?
The 30 million would also include eliminating all your building-based subs. And then we also have teachers that are fully certified, licensed, who could go on, if they're subbing in-house, we can name them interim teachers and put them on state position dollars. Like we have retirees who work 35 years experience, they're licensed, so they make, $250 a day, which is awesome because they've earned it. But when we can only pay them through the contractor service provider currently using ESS. If they're employed by us, we can then put them on a state PRC, which allows the state to pick up the tab for their well-deserved pay rate.
Yeah. So those are the kinds of things we're looking at. And I am sure that there are other possibilities. The goal here is, with these, is our 16 million. As we've done our projections in a room for hours and hours and hours, I think we are trying to continue to bring that personnel cost down, and so that we are getting to a better financial state. There's about $4 million extra dollars in here, so at the end of the year we can put money back into fund balance. So I look at this as, our goal again is financial sustainability for our school district, and also a healthy fund balance. It's balanced budget and sustaining our district for the future. And we think this year's work, next year's work are imperative to doing that. But I also think it's a continuous pay attention to it, because I will tell you, if we hadn't had ESSER, when I looked at the fund balance from 5 years ago, we could have had an issue there, because a lot of positions were added in 2019, and ESSER came, and I feel it gave us this sense of, yes, we can do other things. And then, but I feel like, I'm glad we had ESSER because it allowed us to do those things, but it should have been, we did all this, and now we have to take it away. And that was difficult because of the work that many of those people are doing in our schools. Yes? Oh, I skipped that. I'm so sorry. So we are funding the district is funding all programs that are core instruction. So Wonders, Envision, Heggerty, like core instruction that everybody needs to have access to. We ordered a lot of supplemental programs with ESSER, and we just cannot afford them. And I will tell you, they're programs that people love, but there are many open resources that we can start investigating. I mean, but these are programs that people like MBeam and other programs like that, but we only added all that because we had the ESSER dollars. And so, it's almost a matter of, do you want to do that, or do you want to eliminate like 10 more positions or have more people be impacted? So you have to make choices, but we need to, schools, if they're Title I schools, that, by the way, also, federal funding, some of our Title I schools have lost some Title I funds this year as well, because of keeping at our threshold and adding more schools in, which impacts other schools. And so what I'm saying is we have to make choices. And so those supplemental, that's what they're digital. They're like digital supplemental resources. So with that, if the board, in order for us to do a RIF of central office, so it's a reduction in force of some of the positions, I will show you this next slide. Our goal would be to do a lot of this. Some of it's through attrition, which is great. Some of it is through vacancies that occur during the year that we just haven't filled. And so there's different things we're looking at. But it has to be, when we present this to you all, it has to be necessary. And our reasons are the declining enrollment, the decrease in funding due to ESSER elimination, and insufficient funds to continue at the way that we were going. We just cannot continue down the same path. It does require formal board approval. The total positions count to be eliminated, and you'll see on the next slide a little bit more of a summary, is about 76 total positions. The positions impacted would be about 116 positions impacted. And so when you go to this next, here are different categories of attrition, currently vacant. It shows ends of employment, a reassign. So everything from attrition, currently vacant, a reassigned to different positions are all people not like people being put into other positions. The key to that is that you're not creating a position for somebody to put into. It's because a vacancy occurs that is on state dollars or a different funding source. And that vacancy occurs and you can move people into those. So I think the ones, the RIF for position demotion, and that may be just in months of employment. It could be someone moving to less months of employment, or a different category of their job. That impacts about 18. The employment, the ending of the position. There are positions that we have said we just cannot continue to fund certain positions. We just can't continue to fund them. And what we will do is still try to find, and that's why it says potentially, because you're still trying to find, is there something that comes open at a school site that is funded that we can move people into? That will always be the goal. And then, again, months of employment, reduction of about 40 people, moving from a 12-month to potentially 11-month. So that is about a $7.2 million savings. Again, the board would need to approve. This can change. Our goal is for this to be minimized. So if we can, over the next couple of weeks, minimize that, we will do that. It's continuously changing. And the goal through all of this is that, and we've always said this, is that we take care of our people. This will never be something easy or that I would want to do, but it is something that to have that sustainable fiscal sustainability for our school district, it's necessary as you looked at what we're spending on personnel costs. Especially, I'll just say, as we go into this next budget cycle, and you're right, the classified, there are things that we have said we want to commit to that have to be incorporated into the 25-26 request. And so something has to change with how we're spending on personnel. So with that said, this is the timeline. So if the board will be considering approval of the RIF April 8th, we will be working with any impacted team member throughout the month of April. Our next budget board workshop board budget workshop is April 15th. We will be solidifying our budget request at that time with the board for what we want to take to the county. April 22nd, we will do our formal budget presentation to the board, and in May, we will present to the county commissioners in early May. And are there any other questions now?
Board Member Crowley?
Yeah, how have you accounted for the furloughs on there as far as an amount?
So we are still figuring out what that would be and what would be the best option for freeing up dollars. But whatever we choose, if it's 5 days a person, I'm going to double that, or if it's 10 days a person, I'm going to double that. We still need to make that decision. I can present that to you all at the next meeting.
Okay, is there a goal amount? A total
This
amount
isn't
that you need to get to make this
No, because
work?
that's in addition to that 7 million of savings. That is in addition to.
Board Member Kuhn?
I want to, I guess, kind of clarify how folks fit into camps, so to speak. So if any central office person is a part of the RIF and they need a new position, how will priority be given for, say, a surplus classroom teacher versus a RIF central office?
Right. Chris, do you want to talk about that process?
So, Board Member Kuhn, you're asking if the person's identified through the RIF policy as the person that's being displaced, how they will be placed? Is that the question?
Yes. Specifically, though, will we give priority
Yes.
to teachers
That's correct.
surplus?
So what we'll do is once we identify who's being displaced, they'll get the same process that we use for virtual academy teachers. We'll give them a list, and they'll choose from it based on their certification areas, and they'll be immediately administratively placed without any interview with the principal, just as we did for virtual academy, or we're doing for virtual academy.
But just to be sure, our surplus teachers are going to get first dibs or no?
No, our surplus
Oh.
teachers, and with the, I'm gonna say, I hate talking absolutes because the world's never absolute. The majority of surplus teachers go through the transfer policy or transfer process, and if haven't found a home by June, we then place. Because we think it's best if, principal selects person, person selects principal. In this market, people are choosing the principal more than the principal's choosing them. All right, so that's first, normal surplus. The only exception to that would be, I'm gonna give you an example right now. I literally have 2 PE openings and I have 2 surplus full-time PE teachers. I'm placing them because I can't release it to hiring until I have everyone placed. In most areas, I'll have more vacancies than surplus, so I don't have to worry. We do not want to ever overhire, so someone has to be surplused that we overhired. RIFed because we overhired.
Any other? Oh, sorry, that's your job. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. Any other questions?
So I just wanted to clarify, Tricia. So the conversation about you all, like executive cabinet taking those kind of furlough days, that was derived out of you and the leadership team kind of wanting to like take some accountability and just
Yes.
contribute to the fact that this is, we're kind of all in this together.
Yes.
Okay.
You can't, and I will tell you that people have said to me, well, I can't, how am I not going to work? I'm like, well, we do that pretty much every Saturday and Sunday, working all day and not getting a paycheck for, that's part of our pay. But I think that, yes, it was part of just accountability and knowing that there are people that are being impacted and we all need to be part of that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for all your hard work with this.
Thank you.
We'll move on to our action items. We have 9 items to consider. First, consider approval of the 2025-2026 contract addendum with School Health Alliance. Do I have a motion?
So move.
So, Teroni. Okay, so I have a motion by Board Member Brown Gaither and a second by Board Member Kuhn. Any discussion?
I do have a question about that. Is there a cost on it?
I believe they were raising money from the community for that, but
The
just to
School
get some
Health
clarification.
Alliance. What is the I went through the whole contract. I didn't see anything except for square footage and each.
Yes, Dr. Stokes?
For, we have a contract with School Health Alliance. Is there a cost to it?
So yes, the contract
Yeah.
amount, we did an addendum because it'll remain the same. I believe it was,
It's
Dion, you
150.
may have to correct me, but I believe it was 154, and that's what we pay, 154,000, and that's what we pay for the nurse practitioners that support the schools and the health clinics.
That's what it said in the materials.
Huh?
That's
Yeah,
what it
I-
said in the materials.
Okay.
I didn't see it, and we usually have an amount on the agenda if we're voting on it and where it's coming from. I guess my concern again, and I brought this up previously, was that we're providing a space for an entity to make money because they're billing, and we had the amounts there of how many people were insured. So did we go back and renegotiate that deal? Because that's a pretty sweet deal to not have to pay for your office space, but you get to make money from it.
So we have not renegotiated.
So why-
The addendum piece
Okay.
would be the same amount that we've been paying this past school year.
So, I think, I think I hear you, and I think I'm concerned that, I get that we're looking at money, okay? But I think that the services offered and the services that they provide and the folks that they provide within those services more than gives us our monies back, like our money, it's a money's worth. Because think about, we're getting PAs, we're getting doctors, we're getting nurses, we're getting psychiatrists, and we're not paying them.
But they're billing and getting the money. We're not getting anything for renting them that space to conduct their business.
It's unused space in our buildings, I guess. I don't know.
Okay, but see what I'm saying? They're kind of getting paid twice. They're getting paid once by us to be there to the tune of 154,000, and they're submitting charges. They're getting reimbursed from insurance as well. I had asked in a previous meeting that we look at that contract and that we negotiate a better deal for the school system, but apparently that didn't happen.
So we provided all the information that was requested to the board as it relates to School Health Alliance. That was the numbers and what we were paying for. I believe all that was shared. And so we have not
Well,
negotiated.
and I believe I asked the question at that time, have we looked at this contract to say that, is this a fair business practice? Because if it is, I would love to set up shop in one of our schools and start selling stuff and just take the money.
Yeah.
And not share it out with you and not have to pay for my space. So we asked about this in a meeting a month ago, but we haven't, but I guess nobody thought it was important enough to look into.
I feel like you're misrepresenting what School Health Alliance is by cheapening it and saying that you wish you could go set up shop and charge. I'm bothered by that, and I'm just gonna say that's fine.
So,
Also- yeah,
Dr.
oh, sorry.
Stokes, can I, and if you can, because what we might need to do is just table, like, is it, if we don't vote on it tonight and we table it to the next meeting, like, is the School Health Alliance gonna like stop services and stop services?
No,
Okay, I
because
just-
the services are throughout the remainder of this year.
'Cause we've already paid for that.
The addendum was to add Old Town.
Okay.
Was,
Okay.
Old Town.
Well,
That was the addition to the addendum that we already had.
Okay, so because my question is probably, like, if you can't answer this, then we can, table it, but to Board Member Crowley's point, the $150,000 pays for what specifically? I know that, like, I thought I read it's 2 nurse practitioners.
It is.
And are those nurse practitioners employed through Atrium?
Yeah, and that's not, no,
Okay.
so that's not the full salary.
Okay,
So we're
right.
paying like half salaries
That's what I-
because a
that's what I
nurse
figured.
practitioner is much more than the 154,000
Right.
that we're paying. And so that's a portion of like salary and fringe benefits for at least 2 nurse practitioners. So when they presented and shared earlier, they shared about the mobile clinic and how all the schools that they're servicing, those are supports that are being provided to all the schools that was listed on the presentation.
And
So
so,
it's only a portion of it.
that's what I
of their
thought.
salaries.
But are those the only 2 providers, or are there more providers?
There's multiple providers, so
That's-
there's at least 5 behavior therapists that are working with our students, and psychiatrists that are there. Those are all part of services that are being provided. There's medication management, there's nutrition, there's health services, so that's just a small portion, the 154 to pay for 2 of the nurse practitioners,
So-
advanced practitioners.
So essentially, the School Health Alliance, so like in layman's terms, we are not paying for the full cost of the School Health Alliance.
Correct, absolutely not,
And
not
s-
with the services that they're providing.
Exactly.
And we get none of the income, correct?
But the point, Dr. Stokes, of the services is not for the district to make money. It's to increase access to health and for behavioral health access for both the students in the district as well as employees, correct?
Correct,
Thank you.
correct.
And I'm not looking to make money on this. I'm looking to recover our costs on this so
Yep.
that we're not in a deficit providing this service.
But I guess my point is that with the cost of medical things right now, and the also, like when you think about marginalized students whose parents can't even afford to get off their jobs to take them to a doctor's appointment, having the ability to have and attend an appointment on site is, to me, when you think about the number of schools that this serves, worth the $150,000 for the 2 nurse practitioners that we're paying for, because we're also not paying for all of the other providers that are providing services. To me, the cost, the benefit of it, like this is not we need to make it like neutral, like budget neutral type thing. This is, we're taking on a fraction of the cost to provide students with services that would not otherwise have access to those services, which I think is a no-brainer to me.
And if we were in a different budget circumstance, I would say 100% this is something we should do. But again, we are trying to do and be more than we are funded to be or that we are able to be. And then that's how we end up in a budget deficit.
If cutting $154,000 at the expense of the health and well-being of children is where we do things, I think we're looking at it all wrong.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. All in favor? Okay, opposed? Motion passes 6-3. Next, consider approval of University Instructors LLC contract for Winston-Salem Christian School. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do
Even
I
though
have
it
a
makes me
second?
sick.
Do I have a second?
Second.
So I have a motion and I have a second. A motion by Board Member Kuhn, a second by Vice Chair Barahanan. Any questions?
Just a question for clarity. So, yes, that's my question. Help me understand the why that we must do this.
Here comes Paula.
So for purposes of Title I, when students leave our district, the funding goes with them to the location that they go to. In this case, this is Winston-Salem Christian, but all the dollars funnel through our district to disperse out. So this contract is to serve Title I students, or students identified for Title I services, but who have gone to Winston-Salem Christian.
Okay, may I make a comment?
Yes.
So it goes with the student, but if the student comes back to us 2 months later, it does not come back to us. It stays with them.
We have to look at the fiscal years.
I'm just,
Correct.
it stays with them, so potentially, they could have the child 2 months, and we could have them the remaining months, but we got no funding for them.
For this fiscal year.
Right.
But moving into the next fiscal year, of course, we would recoup.
Well, that's because
Correct.
you were
I
for
just
the
wanted
whole
to
year.
clarify for the public.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Correct.
So what's the penalty if we don't approve this?
That is a good question. I don't. Dion, you would need to, like, I'm not sure. Will it? Is that allowable? I don't think you can.
All right. The provision of equitable services is required by federal law, so we don't really have a choice. In my understanding, because it's over 100,000 and all contracts over 100,000 come to the board.
And they disperse through us, right, in our requirements.
It's over 100,000, so that's
Well,
why it
to
came to
be
the board.
to be clear, it's not that it's not going to go to them because we have to approve the contract. Like we have the authority to approve the contract. If we don't approve the contract, we open ourselves up to liability.
I think so, yes.
Yeah, because I don't want to approve it, but I have to.
But also, I just want to add again, it goes back to my statement, I'm still going to say it. If we reduce our charter school enrollment, we reduce this contract.
Yes, so we have a motion and we have a second. We've had some robust discussion. All in favor? I think. Okay, so once again, all in favor? Okay, opposed? Okay,
Conscientious objector.
motion passes 6-3.
6-3, yeah.
Next, consider approval of the FY 2025 budget amendment and transfer number 7, briefed at the February 25th Finance Committee meeting. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
So I have a motion by Board Member Crowley, a second by Board Member Miller. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Thank you. That passes unanimously. Next, consider approval of the repay contract briefed at the February 25th, 2025 Finance Committee meeting. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
So I have a motion by Board Member Kuhn, a second by Board Member Watts. Woo, just having a moment. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. So next, consider of the FY 2025 budget amendment and transfer number 8, briefed at the March 4th, 2025 Board of Education meeting. Do I have a motion?
So, second.
So I have a motion by Board Member Kuhn, a second by Board Member Watts. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Next, consider approval of the revisions to Policy 5141, Student Healthcare, briefed at the March 4th, 2025 Policy Committee meeting. So I have a motion by Board Member Brown Gaither. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Vice Chair Bohannon. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Next, consider approval of new policy 5141.1, Administration of Medications and Medical Procedures, briefed at the March 4th, 2025 Policy Committee meeting. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Okay, I have a motion by Board Member Miller. Do I have a second? I have a second by Board Member Wood. Any discussion?
Discussion.
Yes.
Just want to make sure, again, like I stated earlier, that we give adequate training to those people who are going to be administering the medications and not also choose one person to carry the load of administering the medicines.
Thank you.
And we've shared information in the principal newsletter regarding volunteers not administering, and we're looking at that for next school year as they decide who their point of contacts are.
And Mr. Watts, the policy was revised to add language to say that a team would be designated as opposed to one individual person to be administering medication.
Thank you. So we have a motion, we have a second, we've had discussion. All in favor? Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. Next, consider approval of the new policy 5141.3, immunization and health requirements for school admission and other screenings, briefed at the March 4th, 2025 Policy Committee. Do I have a motion?
Second.
So I have a motion by Board Member Kuhn, a second by Board Member Crowley. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. Next, consider approval of new policy 5141.4, protocol for concussion and head injuries, briefed at the March 4th, 2025 Policy Committee meeting. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
So I have a motion by Board Member Barr, a second by Board Member Crowley. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. That ends our action items. Our next order of business is the superintendent's update.
Thank you. I know I had a big update a minute ago. This will go faster. Go ahead, Kevin. So first and foremost, we received a report. Andy sent this to us about 2 weeks ago from the state. And yep, there it is. It is a DPI year-over-year report, and basically a couple of a celebration for us. As a compared statewide results, our district has outperformed the state in pandemic recovery in elementary reading and math. We're lagging, so that's good. We're lagging in pandemic recovery in middle school reading and math. So we know that we've got work to do. We've got work to do continuing everywhere. And then our district pandemic recovery, another finding was in science, we're stronger in 5th than in 8th. As we know this year with the science assessment changing, we'll see what happens with that as it's a new test. But so that was celebration. Also, Prom Shop. We, this past Saturday, thanks to the contributions of many donors and not only the clothing and all the everything, but also just materials that went in this. And Lauren did a great job getting this venue ready. But at the bottom of Main Street, the very bottom floor, if you want to stop by this Saturday, there will be Prom Shop. And last Saturday, about 150, was it about 150, Lauren? 120. About 120 students shopped, and all but 2 walked out with amazing dresses. Or men's attire, suits or ties or all of that. And so we do need some things. Yeah, tuxedos and suits. The boys don't always wear tuxes these days. They also wear suits. But these are some things we're in need of, and I wanted to say this publicly. If anyone has these items, we need men's shoes that are not terribly worn, women's dress shoes that are also that are fairly in good condition as well, formal jewelry. If anyone has jewelry that would go for evening attire, and then we need dresses size 2. And then size 16 and up. So if you all know anyone that has any of that, donations can be dropped off at our building at 475 Corporate Square. We had a lot of volunteers. It was like a well-oiled machine last week. So Lauren, great work on that with creating those procedures. But it was awesome. If you want to have some joy on a Saturday morning, stop by and see our kids shopping. Yesterday, and I know Board Member Miller mentioned this, that many of you were at Mo Green's listening session. This was a Piedmont Triad listening session last night, and over 400 people registered to attend this session. I think it was a great opportunity for folks to give State Superintendent Green good feedback about the strategic plan that he'll be creating for the state. Carter High School will be, if you can get by Carter High School, they will be having at the next market is that's this week, that's this week, Thursday, March 27th, from 2:30 to 3:15. Their students actually are selling items in their farmers market. So if anyone can get by there at Carter High School, it would be great for us to support our students at Carter. And last but not least, this is a lot of words, but I wanted to have our summer program. And this is also, we also have Freedom Schools that are on here, but these are the ones the district is directly overseeing. And that is what we have for summer school. So we've got 2nd and 3rd grade. And you can see the school sites that are open for summer for the 2nd and 3rd grade. You can see the hours of operation. We also have sites for our students with exceptionalities, and you can see the sites for those students to be served and make sure they continue getting their services in the summer. And then our high school summer squeeze is at all high school sites. And so there's just more information about summer. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any comments?
Carter, can you go back to the Carter? I think it was at was it 1:30 or 2:30? Let's look again. 2:30 to 3:15 in the gym at Carter. Thank you.
And I just want to give a shout out to Christine Bland for her vision with the prom closet. She started this idea a couple years ago or last year,
Yeah.
and it has been created to something
Yeah.
magical
We
and sustainable.
are going to be bringing the volunteers, the people that have donated money. There have been some substantial donations to one of our board meetings in April. So we'll bring Christine too. Yeah.
That'll be great. Next, we're going to move on to our consent agenda items. We have 4 items to consider. First, consider approval of the general personnel report. Consider approval of the January 28th, 2025 board meeting minutes. Consider approval of the February 11th, 2025 board meeting minutes. And consider approval of the February 25th, 2025 board meeting minutes. Do I have a motion to approve all 5 consent agenda items? Do I have a second? So I have a motion by Board Member Barr, a second by Board Member Kuhn. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. Tuesday, April 8th, 2025 will be our next meeting of our Board of Education. Before we begin our comments, our public comments, let me say to our Cable 2 viewers, thank you for watching. This will conclude our broadcast.
Thank you for joining us on your school channel, Cable 2.